All right, welcome back. Now we have a few minutes and we have a lot to cover with the remaining minutes. So, gentlemen, back to the issue of some of the tax measures that we have seen at the airport, particularly the new proposals by KRA, of course, that has created a lot of talking points for Kenyans. So, Ken, I want to get your sentiments. Is this harassment or proactiveness?
Well, I think it's important to put it into context that indeed the government needs to raise revenue to fund its operations, to clear the debt obligations, but also good tax policy should not be burdensome to the citizens. Just a few minutes ago, you played a clip about tourists coming to Kenya as we enter into the high season. Yeah. And it's very likely that such sentiments can discourage people and people to look at alternative destinations. So it's important to find that sweet spot between genuine revenue collection without the harassment that has been trending on social media.
All right, so Daktari, when you look at some of these implementation phases and how KRA particularly is getting along with the process, what comes to mind? And I'm sure you're a frequent traveler and flyer, so you use JKIA very often, and you can imagine now having to pay taxes for your phone severally. Every time you leave the country, you have to declare. Whenever you come back, you have then to, if you didn't declare, you have to pay for it.
Okay, you see, it's part of legislation. It has been there in the East African Customs legislation, but then it had not been effected. Mm-hmm. Though you see, if something has taken long without being effected, people get used to the norm, which is I just travel. I don't need to tell people how many phones I have, how many phones I've come back with, and how many of the electronic devices I've bought, which is majorly something, most of them are likely to be above the 75,000 shillings. So it is going to disturb the regular travelers, because they will actually see now they have to do something that they have not been doing all the time. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit disruptive, but the thing is that it has been in the legislation, and as you know, now we are looking for money.
All right, so Ken, when you look at this, should there have been time then to sensitize the public, to tell people that if you want to travel, then come a certain date, we're going to be implementing some of these new measures? Absolutely,
Jimmy. There should be some sensitization, particularly as Prof said, this is something that has not been there for quite some time. There should have been some sensitization on what is the objective, what is being tried to achieve. And this should have been the last time. Normally November, December is you're gearing for the high season. Now, this country depends on foreign exchange from tourists. So if tourists find coming to Kenya has become a burden, people will go to Tanzania or to Uganda. So I think the timing was a poor choice. There was no sensitization, and this is something they could have easily communicated as future guidance.
All right, so Prof, again, we're going into the high season. This is the time that we expect the diaspora or the summer bannings to come into the country. Again, when you look at this, and even as they plan some of these travels, are we putting the country in a negative spot in terms of people avoiding coming into Kenya for holiday?
Jimmy, tourism is about competitiveness, and whenever people are making choices from abroad, they will always want to come to a place where they will be handled well. So we need to read from this, because just a small thing like that can change the mind of somebody that had prepared to come over. So I think we just need to understand the language of competitiveness and also in the KRA staff, we need to do a lot of customer care training and ensuring that they handle the customers well.
All right, already as it is, Ken, there are passengers who would feel frustrated at JKIA. So to add this into that cocktail of things that are going wrong, then in the long term, what is the knock-on effect of this then when we look forward into maybe the next 2 years, the next 3 years? What impact or what damage will it have done to the airport?
Well, the damage will be quite significant. And Jimmy, this is not just about JKIA. It's about the entire country as an image. Think of a tourist in the United States who has been told the fees at Masai Mara Gate Reserve have gone up significantly. You pay extra taxes at the airport. Such a person will make that calculation and say, in the United States, if if you pay $80, you can get a ticket for your car to go to any park for a whole year. So somebody will wonder, why should I use my life savings to go to a place where that's so much more expensive? So I think it's about the entire investment, destination, tourist attraction. And I think this is where the cabinet secretaries for tourism need to come in very strongly to talk to the treasury counterpart in terms of finding, harmonizing our way without compromising ourselves as a good tourist destination.
All right, so Prof, when you look at Kenya, largely we have been known as a good tourism, one of the most favorable tourism attractive countries. So when we start frustrating these tourists who are coming into the country, and even something that the CS for tourism spoke about, the fact that you have your luggage now being unlocked and being opened at the airport in a way that then gets to embarrass you. So, and yet at the same time, we are competing for the same tourists and countries that are offering the same products as Kenya. When you talk of Rwanda, when you talk of Arusha and Tanzania, then in terms of our tourism sector, what more can be done to make sure that we streamline this process and to make sure we do not disadvantage the country?
I think we need to approach it with approach the issue with a lot of caution, ensure that we put our things in order. Maybe a bit of ensuring that we up our game in terms of hospitality aspects, train the hospitality aspect so that we can actually gain and compete well with our competitors in tourism industry.
All right. So, Ken, how best or what should KRA have done better or in a more civilized manner?
I think KRA is in a tough spot right now because KRA is in charge of tax administration. And I think they need to talk to the people who craft the tax policy because that's where it sits, the parliamentarians. And I think that's where the heavy lifting has to be done. So I think KRA needs to talk to really the Finance and Economic Planning Committee in Parliament. Yeah. Think of that tax policy that we've been talking about for a long time. It's always been in draft stage. Can we fast track it? Can we get it out there so that KRA, whose hands are tied, they really have to execute, can do what works best for Kenyans?
All right, and Prof, when you look at this whole scenario, again, there has been a lot of back and forth. The communication is not clear in terms of what then is going to be taxed. That is above $500,000, which is about 75,000 Kenya shillings from. So initially, the idea was whether it's items that you've already used or they're new items, they will be subjected to this tax. And then a few days later, KRA then changed the tone and they amended some of these issues. So in terms of that confusion, then where does that leave Kenyans?
We need to straighten up things, especially in terms of what is being taxed and what is not being taxed. The thing that KRA has even alluded to. We need to expand the bracket, in my view, because when you talk of $500, that could be very little. Yeah. You need to expand so that we can actually have the taxation covering something that is bigger. Revise the figures, increase the cutoff so that we talk of more. Because when people travel outside, they might come with some goods that they have come with from out. And also we need to be very clear in terms of used goods or things that are new. And we need to have clear-cut kind of regulation on that.
All right, so let's switch gears and talk about the inflation numbers that just came out the other day. And of course, this has an impact in terms of the purchasing power of Kenyans and especially looking at the tough economic times. So, Prof, from where we're sitting at the moment, inflation is at 6.9. Last month, it was at 6.8. So what seems to be happening in that space from your own estimations?
The inflation has gone up from 6.8 now to 6.9, and we all know that the major culprit in this is the fuel prices. The fact that the fuel prices have continued to rise, that makes the transport to go up, and that actually affects the inflation level. So we need to address the issue relating to that. Again, also on the food prices, that has also made the food inflation to go up. Yeah. So those are two major issues that are actually happening that is fueling the inflation level. So those are the things that needs critical address.
All right, so Ken, again, we've had this narrative from the government saying that we are close to harvest season, we expect food inflation to go down. Does that then reflect in the numbers that we are seeing?
In terms of better rainfall and better yield, we do expect that, but as you showed earlier on, some of the key items, talk of Irish potatoes, talk of carrots, we are seeing double digits inflation on those. So I think there needs to be a particular focus on particularly the vegetable items that tend to be retailing a bit higher. But of course, fuel, it will always be a denominator. Obviously, part of it is being driven by global events such as the Israel-Hamas war and what that's doing to the fuel prices. But fuel has to be real. That's where the real hard strategy has to be at, because it percolates also into food inflation.
All right, so gentlemen, in about a minute or 30 seconds, I just want you to, some of the key things that we have seen, the inflation numbers rising, particularly on the issue of housing, water, electricity, transport. These are the big areas that we need to look at. So going into the last 2 months of the year, what are some of the areas that we need to start bracing for? Doc?
Of course, the fuel, we are seeing that it will continue to rise. Of course, as we are rightly observing the Hamas and Israel war, that actually means that the Kenyans should be bracing up for that in terms of the rise of the fuel, and that will actually affect some of the foods that are being transported, especially in the urban areas. So the urban inflation will be higher. We also expect positively that the rains will do well, so we'll be able to have some good food production if where possible. So we hope that that could actually change the scenario. But going forward, still more. We still have to expect adverse situation.
All right, so Ken, going into the last 2 months of the year, what should we brace for? What should we expect in terms of inflation numbers? Where do you see inflation settling by the end of the year?
I think a big part of that will be determined by international events, not least the Israel-Hamas war. If that escalates significantly, we might see global fuel prices going up significantly, and that will definitely be felt here locally. So I think much of that will be tied to global events.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much, and it's good to have you back. I hope, Doc, again, the rain won't be a problem for you after we're done here. But thank you for watching. That's all we have for you this week. Mbiu ya KTN is up next.